The air was still over Tehran when the explosions broke the night. Moments later, reports confirmed it. An Israeli strike had hit Iranian-linked targets. While the region held its breath, one voice broke the silence loud and clear. Former U.S. President Donald Trump issued a bold warning to Iran, sparking worldwide debate. His words didn't just echo across America, they shook the entire Middle East. What did Trump say? And how does this change what happens next? Just after midnight, powerful airstrikes hit a military facility believed to be connected to Iran's Revolutionary Guard. The attack, confirmed by several regional news outlets and satellite images, reportedly took place near the Syrian border, a hot zone known for hosting Iranian weapons shipments and proxy group operations. Locals described the sky lighting up like fire and the sound of explosions echoing for miles. Ambulances rushed to the site, while fire crews battled flames long into the early morning hours. Israel has not officially claimed responsibility for the strike, following its usual policy of strategic silence. However, military analysts say the type of precision used and the target's nature strongly suggest Israeli involvement. The strike is believed to have destroyed advanced drone components, possibly on their way to Iranian proxy forces like Hezbollah or militias in Iraq. This attack comes just days after a tense exchange between Israeli forces and Hezbollah along the Lebanon border, and weeks after Iran announced it had expanded uranium enrichment, drawing concern from Western nations. Many now believe the Israeli strike was a direct message, not just to Iran's allies, but to Iran itself. Iranian officials quickly condemned the attack, calling it an act of war and vowing a response. In a statement from Tehran, Iran's defense ministry said, "This cowardly assault will not go unanswered." No official count of casualties has been released, but local media claim several military personnel were killed and others injured. The situation has sparked fear across the region. Neighboring countries are watching closely, with some tightening border security and others issuing flight warnings. The United Nations has called for urgent de-escalation, while the European Union warned of a dangerous tipping point. Russia and China also issued statements condemning the use of force and urging restraint. In Israel, government sources have remained tight-lipped, but military leaders met in emergency briefings through the night. Citizens in northern Israel were advised to remain close to bomb shelters in case of retaliatory rocket fire from across the border. The Israeli public, already under high alert, is bracing for more. This strike didn't happen in a vacuum. Over the past year, tensions between Israel and Iran have slowly escalated. Cyber attacks, drone strikes, and covert operations have quietly fueled what many experts call a shadow war. But this latest move feels different, bolder, louder, and more public. And with a high-profile warning now coming from a former U.S. president, the spotlight on the region is brighter than ever. As the dust settles on the ground, the battle of words has just begun. In the next section, we'll look at what exactly Donald Trump said, why he chose this moment to speak, and how his message is shaking the global stage. The world was still processing the shocking Israeli airstrike when former U.S. President Donald Trump broke his silence. From his estate in Mar-a-Lago, Trump released a powerful message that immediately made headlines. Speaking at a press event for his 2024 campaign, he shifted from domestic issues to the rising crisis in the Middle East. His tone turned sharp, his expression serious. And then came the words that captured global attention. Iran should be very careful. If they make the wrong move, the consequences will be like nothing they've ever seen before. The statement was direct, forceful, and intentionally vague, leaving both critics and supporters wondering what he meant exactly. Was it a call for action, a warning to the current U.S. administration, or a show of support for Israel's latest military move? Trump, known for his tough talk on Iran during his presidency, doubled down on his earlier policies. He reminded reporters that during his time in office, he withdrew from the Iran nuclear deal, imposed maximum pressure sanctions, and approved the targeted killing of Iranian General Qasem Soleimani. "When I was in charge, Iran was afraid to act," he said. "Now, they think they can test the world again. That ends now." The former president's warning sent shockwaves through diplomatic circles. While no longer in office, Trump remains a powerful voice, especially with elections approaching. His remarks instantly went viral, shared by millions across social media platforms. Some praised his firm stance, saying it showed strength at a time of uncertainty. Others criticized him, warning that such aggressive rhetoric could make an already dangerous situation worse. White House officials were quick to respond. Though not directly naming Trump, a senior spokesperson stated that reckless political statements do not help de-escalate conflict, and that U.S. foreign policy is guided by the current administration, not former leaders. Still, behind closed doors, analysts believe the Biden administration is monitoring Trump's influence on the situation closely. What stood out most in Trump's warning was the emphasis on Israel. "Israel has the right to defend itself, and no nation should question that," he declared. "They struck because they had to, and I support their decision to act before it's too late." This line was quickly picked up by Israeli news outlets and political figures, many of whom see Trump as a long-standing ally of the state. International leaders expressed concern over Trump's words. The German Foreign Ministry said all efforts should be directed at peace, not provocation. The British Foreign Secretary emphasized that the region needs calm, not chaos. Meanwhile, officials in Tehran called Trump's warning empty threats from a man without power. But privately, insiders suggest Iranian leadership is paying close attention. Beyond the politics, Trump's statement has reignited debates inside America. Supporters at his rally cheered loudly, chanting, "USA, USA," as he spoke about standing by allies and showing strength. However, critics, including former diplomats, warned that adding pressure at this stage might backfire. One former intelligence official said, "If Iran sees Trump's words as backed by real U.S. military support, it could provoke a rash decision." The world has seen before how quickly tensions can rise after a single statement. Trump's words, timed just hours after the Israeli strike, have added another layer of heat to an already boiling situation. And while he no longer controls the military, his voice still carries enough weight to shift conversations, shape headlines, and influence decisions. In the next section, we'll examine how Iran is responding, not just in words but with possible military action. What are they planning? Are they preparing to strike back? And how are Iran's allies moving behind the scenes? The next move could change everything. Hours after Donald Trump's warning went viral and the Israeli airstrike shook the region, Iran officially responded, not just with words, but with action. The Iranian government condemned both the strike and Trump's message, calling them part of a larger pattern of Western aggression. But this time, the tone was different, stronger, louder, and more dangerous. Iran's foreign ministry released a statement calling the Israeli attack a criminal act of war and declared that the Zionist regime will be held accountable. While the message was directed mainly at Israel, the final lines also addressed Trump's statement, referring to it as the desperate rant of a former leader who fueled chaos during his term. But behind these public remarks, something more serious was unfolding. According to intelligence reports from Western agencies, Iran immediately raised its military alert level. Troop movements were spotted near key borders, including along the Iraq-Syria corridor, a known route for transferring weapons and personnel to Iranian-backed militias. In Lebanon, Hezbollah leaders held emergency meetings, and increased activity was noted at key bases near the Israeli border. Meanwhile, in Iraq, leaders of several Iran-aligned militias vowed revenge. Iranian state television aired dramatic footage of missile units conducting live drills. The broadcast featured commanders inspecting rockets, soldiers loading launchers, and war games aimed at enemy targets. Though presented as routine training, the message was clear. Iran was readying for escalation. In Tehran, crowds gathered, outside government buildings chanting anti-Israel and anti-American slogans. Some burned U.S. and Israeli flags, demanding retaliation. The energy on the streets was tense. Revolutionary Guard commanders made public appearances, shaking hands with soldiers, declaring that Iran's enemies will regret their crimes. National pride mixed with pain and fury. The people wanted justice and action. Though no missile response was launched immediately, military experts believe Iran is weighing its options carefully. A direct attack on Israel could trigger a full-scale war. A strike on U.S. bases in Iraq or Syria would provoke American involvement. Instead, Iran may choose a familiar path, using proxy groups to respond indirectly. Groups like Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, and militias in Iraq are known to act as Iran's extended arm, allowing Tehran to strike without direct fingerprints, and signs of this strategy are already showing. Within 48 hours of the Israeli airstrike, drone activity increased in northern Israel. Several Israeli defense systems were activated near the Golan Heights. In southern Lebanon, 2 rockets were fired toward Israeli territory, though no group claimed responsibility. Israel responded with limited artillery fire. It was a dangerous game of signals, each side testing the other's limits. At the same time, cyber experts in the U.S. and Israel warned of increased Iranian cyber attack attempts. Several Israeli infrastructure websites experienced temporary outages, though no official connection was confirmed. Still, the suspicion pointed toward Tehran. Iran has a known cyber unit capable of disrupting systems, stealing data, and launching online attacks, all while avoiding physical warfare. Behind the scenes, diplomatic efforts are quietly underway. Qatar, Turkey, and the United Nations have all reportedly reached out to Tehran and Jerusalem, urging restraint. But both sides appear locked in a silent standoff, waiting for the other to blink first. Iran's leadership is also closely watching the United States. President Biden has called for calm and said that his administration is working to prevent further escalation. However, Trump's comments complicate the picture. Iranian officials see the former president's words as evidence that powerful American voices are pushing for confrontation. This belief may harden Tehran's stance. Inside Iran, there is political pressure on the government to act. Hardliners are demanding a show of strength. Even moderate voices are calling for a response, warning that failure to react could be seen as weakness. The leadership is under intense pressure, domestically and internationally, to balance pride with pragmatism. As the days pass, the world watches. Everyone knows that one wrong move, one miscalculation, could lead to a much bigger war. The Middle East is once again standing on a knife's edge, with lives, economies, and global peace hanging in the balance. In the final section, we'll explore how this growing crisis could affect the U.S., Israel, and the world. Is this the beginning of a wider war? Or will cooler heads prevail? What happens next may depend on diplomacy, deterrence, or destruction. The Middle East has always been a region where one action can trigger a chain reaction, and now the stakes are higher than ever. After the Israeli airstrike, Iran's military posturing, and Trump's sharp warning, world leaders are scrambling to keep the situation from spiraling into all-out conflict. But can they stop what's already in motion? For the United States, this situation presents a serious diplomatic test. The Biden administration is facing pressure from both domestic and international forces. On one side, U.S. allies like Israel expect full backing in the name of security and self-defense. On the other, diplomatic partners in Europe and the Middle East are urging Washington to avoid escalation and focus on negotiations. It's a delicate balance, supporting an ally without starting a war. In a televised statement, President Biden emphasized that the United States supports Israel's right to defend itself, but we also urge all parties to step back from the brink. He confirmed that U.S. forces in the region were on high alert and that American embassies in key countries had received additional security reinforcements. At the same time, the Pentagon moved several aircraft carriers closer to the region as a precautionary measure. Though described as routine, the message was clear. The U.S. is ready to act if its interests or personnel are threatened. Meanwhile, Trump's statement continues to echo. His warning to Iran, issued outside of official government authority, has created confusion and raised concerns among foreign diplomats. Several leaders have quietly expressed frustration, saying that mixed messages from the U.S. only make the crisis harder to manage. Still, Trump's words have energized certain groups, especially in Israel, where some see his return to the conversation as a sign that the West may take a harder stance. For Israel, this moment is critical. After carrying out the strike, Israeli officials are now preparing for possible retaliation. The Israeli Defense Forces have deployed additional troops near northern borders, reinforced air defense systems like the Iron Dome, and placed several towns on high alert. Schools in border areas have been closed. Emergency drills are being conducted nationwide. Israel's leadership insists it will not back down and is prepared to meet force with force. But while preparing for war, Israeli diplomats are also reaching out to global partners, trying to justify their actions and prevent international backlash. The government argues that the strike was a preventive one, meant to stop a major attack before it happened. They claim intelligence showed Iran was preparing to transfer deadly new drone systems to its proxy forces. Whether the world accepts this justification remains to be seen. For Iran, the choice is equally difficult. Retaliate openly and risk direct war with Israel and possibly the U.S., or respond through proxies and risk another drawn-out shadow war. Inside Iran, many citizens are torn. Some support military action, driven by anger and national pride. Others, weary of years of conflict and sanctions, fear what another war could do to the country's already struggling economy. And then there's the global picture. Oil markets have already reacted. Prices jumped as investors feared supply chain disruptions. Energy experts warn that a major conflict involving Iran could lead to a serious spike in global fuel costs. The Strait of Hormuz, a key waterway where 1/3 of the world's oil passes, could become a flashpoint if things worsen. Stock markets have dipped slightly, with investors pulling out of riskier assets. Airlines have canceled flights over parts of the Middle East. The United Nations has held emergency meetings, and the Security Council is expected to push for a diplomatic solution. But many experts say this crisis may already be beyond quiet negotiation. Humanitarian groups are also sounding alarms. If open war breaks out, civilian populations across Israel, Lebanon, Syria, and possibly Iran could be caught in the middle. Refugee numbers would rise. Food and medicine supplies could be blocked, and aid workers may struggle to operate in war zones. So, what comes next? That depends on choices made in the coming hours and days. Will Iran strike back? Will Israel launch another attack? Can the U.S. calm tensions, or will it be forced into action? And how will Trump's voice, now back in the public sphere, continue to shape the narrative? One thing is certain: the world is watching and hoping for de-escalation. But the pieces are already moving on the board, and one wrong step could set off a chain of events no one can control. The warning has been issued. The response is coming. And the balance of peace in the Middle East hangs by a thread.